What's going on, everybody? For the second book review today, it's a book that is by one of my favorite authors and someone who recently passed away about this time last year. And it's hard to believe it's been almost a year since the late, great Ravi Zacharias passed away and went to be with the Lord at the age of 74. For those of you who don't know, there's a picture of Ravi. That's what he looked like. Originally from India. His parents were respectively from the south in the cities of Kerala and Chennai. He's not the first Christian apologist, but he probably is one of the greatest ones, certainly of my generation. There's been people long before him like C.S. Lewis, Malcolm Muggeridge, and even going back to the 17th century, 18th century, I believe, was Blaise Pascal. You had the late, great Justin Martyr in the 2nd century, mid-2nd century, thereabouts, early mid-2nd century. Just a lot of good books. I mean, if you get a chance to read him, he's got some really good stuff, and look him up. But this particular book about Ravi that I have today is called "Has Christianity Failed You?" Has Christianity failed you? And one of the things that he says right away in this book, he asks the question that, is it God who has failed you? Is it the belief in Christianity that has failed you? Or is it the purported people who claim to, quote, follow Christianity that have failed you? In other words, is it God who has failed you? Is it Jesus and the Bible that has failed you? Or is it those who claim to follow the Bible? Is it those who claim to follow Jesus? Is it those who claim to follow God who have failed you? Because there is a difference between the two. A belief system failing you and the people who follow those belief system failing you are two different things. But these are. It's a really good book that explores, who is Jesus, are purpose-driven and reason-driven always at odds? In other words, does living by purpose and living by reason, are those two in conflict with each other? Are they not? It says Zacharias tackles the head-on the question of why so many people today have given up on faith. In the end, he asks whether it is God or whether it is the church as God's representative who has failed. And more dramatically, he asks if the irrational ends of the skeptic's view of the world without God place at risk the very existence of humanity. And this is really, that just comes from the back. But, he really tries to redirect and ask the question, how has if the church has failed, how has the church failed? And two, what does it mean to look like someone who follows God, who follows the faith directly? For people like myself who are part Jewish, it is something that is very hard to do. It is a very hard pill to swallow when it comes to believing in Christianity over traditional Judaism, or someone like myself who was born and effectively raised a nominal Catholic agnostic with Jewish and Gentile heritage, to come into faith. And really, speaking for myself, I know for me that it was investigating and exploring the faith on my own that really got me to believe, and the fact that my family gave me the freedom to do that. So if you're someone who's struggling with faith, if you're someone who is not a person of faith, but kind of wants to know what all the hubbub is about, and, just have a understanding of what's going on, this book came out in 2010, so it's a little over a decade old, but it's a really good read. And for those who have questions about faith, for those who have questions about what's the difference between a person of faith failing you versus God failing you, or what does it look like, or what does that appear to look like? and what are the differences, and how do you navigate that? Ravi's always been someone who pushes people to critically think, whether it's in his speaking or in his writing, and I myself have been no exception. As someone who's been reading him now for at least 20 years, if not more. So it's just a really good read if you have questions and you need answers. And if you're trying to figure out whether it's Christianity that has failed you or whether it has the followers of Christianity that have failed you, and to really work through that. So that's just my recommendation for this particular book. So, and I hope you read it, and I hope you get a chance to see it through. Peace.